Welcome to the Halliwell Manor. I'm Max.
And I'm Tina.
And we're here to discuss Season 4, Episode 6 of Charmed.
A night to remember.
Knight.
A knight to remember. Yeah. I spent my first semester in college before I transferred to the college I would eventually matriculate to at UCF, and their mascot is the Knights, and I got so sick of Knight puns. They're like the lowest hanging fruit in the pun world.
Did they put K's in front of other stuff that had N, or was it just all night stuff? Like movie night, but was it also like, I can't think of anything else that starts with an N that you'd have posters for off the top of my head, but...
Yeah, no, it was just movie night with a K. It wasn't like it's Canacho Day in the cafeteria. Yeah, no, they did not do that, thank God.
We wouldn't have made it the full semester if they had done that.
Yeah, no. Well, it didn't, actually. But it would have been even worse.
So, this is a pretty solid episode.
Yeah, I quite liked this episode, and in no small part because of Rose McGowan.
Yeah, and I know the whole episode we were going, oh my god, it's like Once Upon a Time. It's like a preview for Once Upon a Time. It's just because it's fairy tale stuff. Like this isn't Once Upon a Time specific, but oh my god, True Love's Kiss, that was a thing before Once Upon a Time. But the fact that Rose McGowan was in Once Upon a Time and...
Okay, listen. It isn't, oh my god, it's Once Upon a Time because it has all of the fairy tale tropes, which it does, or because True Love's Kiss is a thing, which it is. It's because it gives us a sexy, evil witch queen that we love.
It's true.
That is... Okay, it's not uncommon, but it's not a standard fairy tale trope, and it is very much Once Upon a Time.
Unfortunately, it also brings back the weird past lives thing.
Oh, hey, let's save that for molecular combustion.
So the episode opens with Paige having sexy times with some guy, or having post-sexy times with some guy. Glenn, who I believe comes back later. He's an occasional sex friend of Paige's.
He does come back later. He is an occasional sex friend of Paige's. And we learn later that they were, like, childhood friends who, like, just occasionally hook up now.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't learn any of that in this episode. This episode just opens with them in bed together, and we're supposed to take all of that as just read, I guess.
So, I mean, I know it's been several episodes, but so she just broke up with that boyfriend she had who was possessed by the source of all evil, then.
He got possessed by the source of all evil.
It's not on him.
No, it's in him.
Temporarily, which, although I guess he was possessed by the source of all evil and he's still, like, around and stuff. I was under the impression that it was a very big deal to be possessed by the source of all evil. Like, Cole had to be the biggest, baddest demon in the universe to survive it, but... Although, I guess he was back to baseline human.
Honestly, I assume he broke up with her because that was just too freaky. And he couldn't deal. That's what I assume.
God, if there was ever a situation for white light or memory dust.
Yeah. But it's okay, he's gone now. We don't care about him.
Yeah.
What we care about is Paige telling this new love interest, this fairy tale, about an evil enchantress who came between the prince and his beautiful maiden, and the enchantress wins, gets impregnated by the prince, kills him, gives birth to the ruler of the kingdom, and through this child rules the kingdom forever.
This is a really familiar sounding story for those of you who have listened to our Once Upon a Time podcast and or actually watched Once Upon a Time. This is almost exactly the backstory of a certain character in that show.
Well,
it's not exactly Cora's backstory in Once Upon a Time, but it does have a lot of similarities, which obviously they're just pulling off fairy tale tropes.
Well, I mean, can I say the biggest difference?
Mm-hmm.
In Paige's fairy tale, the enchantress is successful.
I'd say Cora was pretty successful for a lot of it. I mean, she started out as a miller's daughter. She learned magic, married the king, prince, whatever. Had a daughter, took over the kingdom. It wasn't until later in life when she tried to take over a second kingdom and then eventually got killed by Snow White. Like, she was successful for a lot of her life. It just kind of fell apart in the last bit.
Yeah, I guess so. So,
Oh, and she made it to heaven at the end. She was trapped in hell, and she was Hades' secretary or whatever for a while, but she got redeemed. Honestly, way too easily, but
God, that hell season is just. I mean, I know a lot of Once Upon a Time is this, but damn, that hell season is just a lesson in missed opportunities.
there's so much cool stuff that they did nothing with. Oh, we're going to establish a interesting plot, which is, they can lessen Hades' power by helping people move out of hell, which you can do by confronting the issues that trapped you in hell in the first place. And then they don't do anything with that for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but yes, Paige is telling this fairy tale to her sex friend, and her sex friend, Glenn, is like, that's kind of a depressing little story. Why does it end like that? And she's like, well, that's just how it ends. And he's like, but you made it up, right? Couldn't you change how it ends? And she's like, no, it feels right that way.
It's a story that, like, she sensed it as a child somehow.
Although, I want to point out, just for the record, you're recording this, right? This is all on the record.
This is all on the record.
But for the record, this is not actually how things panned out in her past life.
I was gonna bring that up. Okay, well, we'll talk about that.
Oh, spoiler alert, this is something Paige is subconsciously picking up on from her past life. Speaking of...
Wait, so we flash to this past life, and I just want to throw out there, we just see the maiden at this point. I just want to throw out there, originally in the script, the prince in this story was supposed to be Glenn. It was supposed to be his past life. And the actor who played Glenn is like, that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really work for me. So they just changed it.
You know what? That's good. Having actors have input on shows is usually a pretty hit or miss thing. I like that they made it so this isn't, because...
He's right, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because it implies a kind of manipulation in their relationship that does not exist.
Also, as we remember from the last past life episode, maybe the relationship doesn't work out, and then you have this weird thing where Piper's past life was involved with neighbor fucking Dan because their destinies are entwined. Yeah, Piper's destiny was real fucking entwined with neighbor fucking Dan.
So, there are these Sweet Valley High books.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. One of them is called, like, the Wakefield Chronicles, and the other one, I forget the name altogether because it's the twins' mother's maiden name. I don't know. Maybe it's Bennett, like the Bennett Chronicles.
Like Victor Bennett and Charmed?
Yes. I don't remember what the mother's maiden name was, but it tracks, like, their ancestors all the way through time. Like, I think it starts with, gosh, I was going to say it starts with them immigrating to America, but that wouldn't be enough generations because those books are fucking long. So I think it starts like a generation or two before they immigrate to America, and then it goes down the generations until we get to the Wakefield parents. And in every generation, they almost hook up, but then they don't until we get to, like, the Wakefield guy almost hooks up with the Bennett woman until they get to the modern day.
God.
And I'm just saying Bennett, I don't remember what her name is. But, yeah, saying that, like, your pasts were entwined and you were meant to be together just raises more questions, is my point.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like this episode, but I feel like Charmed doing past life stuff really doesn't work in a place where your soul definitely goes to a different place after it dies and keeps doing stuff after you're dead. Like, what's getting recycled here exactly?
Oh, okay, so you might have to cut this, but I feel like I have to share it with you.
Okay.
As you know, I listen to a podcast called Buffy the Gilmore Slayer, where two people talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gilmore Girls as shows. And they also have a little segment called Meanwhile on Charmed, where the two of them, who have never watched Charmed, recap it based on the IMDb summaries. And at one point, I was listening to it, and they're like, Meanwhile on Charmed was like, and then Whitelighters can bring back the dead, but only under certain circumstances, like to attend parties? Is that right? That can't be right! And I was like, oh, no. My sweet summer children.
Yeah, like the past life thing in Charmed really doesn't work with anything they've set
Right,
up.
like if Grams is there in the attic, how is she going? So did she just take like a break from past lives?
And when like they're doing a wickening or whatever, if the same souls are being passed down, and also I appreciate that this doesn't appear to be the case in this episode, but if souls are just passed down through the family, and you just have your old family member souls, then how are there a bunch of ghosts when they do awakening? Like, shouldn't there just be like two ghosts?
Yes.
Like, Charm's thing with past lives never makes sense, but it also, I feel like this is the last time they ever touch on it. Whenever I make a definitive statement like that, it's almost always wrong, but...
I mean, I appreciate that they want to tell a story set in the past, and they want to use our characters, our heroes. So, okay, we'll just say it was their past life, and also their past life just happened to be exactly this life, and it was their ancestor. You know what? I've talked myself around to not liking how they do past lives. Like, the episode with... You can do episodes in the past and have it be their ancestors and have them just be identical ancestors. They don't have to be past souls.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like,
I mean, it works in this episode. I like that this is Paige's past life. I like this past life thing a lot. And, notably, she's not a Warren.
yeah. I think it doesn't work within the mythology of Charmed. I think past lives don't work. I do like this episode. I like this as a story conceit, but it kind of... And they reference the last past life episode. They like briefly reference... But they don't get into it. Phoebe mentions that she had a past life that was evil, but like it's not a point of relation between...
When you say that this past life episode doesn't work in the mythology of Charmed, what you mean is that this one is good and works, unlike the mythology of Charmed.
Oh, no, I mean, past lives in general don't work as a concept in Charmed. Yeah. Where when you die, you get a job and start doing other stuff. God, you just never get to relax.
Like Leo, right? Leo is dead.
Okay, we talked about this in that episode, but Leo's past life exists in, that time period. A time period where Leo was alive. Because I guess they just forgot that Leo's a white lighter and that he was actually around in the 20s as a living person.
All right, let's talk about this episode. So we see the maiden and the evil enchantress who has captured her, and then the enchantress steps out of the shadows, and it's Paige, but it's Rose McGowan.
Yeah.
Looking hot. I mean...
Yeah, no, this aesthetic works for her so well. I do like that they play it off as a reveal, and they've altered her voice in post so that she's deeper. So she's like, I've captured you, O maiden, and I will take your prince, and I will bear his child, and I will stab him to death, and then my child and I will rule the kingdom. But it's all artificially deepened, and then they have to do it for the rest of the episode. It's so that you don't know it's Paige.
So there's definitely like some sweetening going on, but I think a lot of that is Rose McGowan doing it with her voice.
Yeah, I wish they hadn't done, like, it's just a little bit in post. Like, it's nowhere near as bad as when Prue got turned into a dude.
Oof.
But I feel like Rose McGowan was just doing a lower voice, and then they just tweaked it a little. It's not enough. It's not terrible. It's enough that you're aware of it, and it's enough that you're aware of it, but it's little enough where you're like, you probably could have not done it at all. And it was all for a reveal that happens at the end of the first scene she's introduced in.
Yes, she steps into the light and she's wearing like this green Ren Fair evil queen dress and like this circlet. Like it's a good look for her.
It does. Yeah, it's a really good look. Rose McGowan has a good, I was gonna say face, but honestly general aesthetic for Ren Fair stuff.
Some people, like, it doesn't work to, like, some people don't have historical faces.
I do not believe that Jeremy Renner could possibly exist in a world that does not have electric razors. He has modern face so bad. Like, seeing him with long... Remember that one episode of Angel where he's, like, an old vampire buddy of Angel's?
Yes.
And he's got, like, the terrible past wig. I'm like, nope, not buying it. Not buying it. But yeah, no, Rose McGowan's aesthetic really works in an old-timey way. Very, pale skin, dark hair. There's a reason she was cast as Cora. I mean...
Yeah.
So,
So we come back from credits from this reveal to find Piper still sad about Prue, just hanging out in her room, looking at her stuff, including her necklace that says Prue.
remember the Prue necklace that she was always wearing? The Prue necklace that said Prue? She wore it in every episode. It was her iconic Prue necklace.
But yes, Piper is still sad about Prue, and
I'm torn because the scene on its own is fine. Like, it's a little maudlin, but, death. And I appreciate that they are still keeping the grief for Prue as part of the show. But it's also been, 6 episodes, and they spend...
to be clear, in reality, you're not moving on after 6 weeks. More than that, because summer happened. But you're not moving on after 4 months of your sister dying, especially in such a horrifying way. But in a show where you fired the actress, maybe calm down.
Yeah, and again, it's a perfectly good scene, but we've also kind of had a lot of this sort of scene. And
to give Charmed some credit, this sequence, and in fact, this whole subplot in this episode is about them letting it go and realizing that they need to
bring Paige in.
Right. But also the show realizes that they need to have a way to let Prue go and bring Paige in without making it feel like a cheat. Without making it feel like, okay, well, Prue's dead, you're our sister now.
Yes. And I do like that this scene, it comes off as just Piper grieving Prue, but there was actually a practical reason for her to go in there. She was going in there to get a leather jacket because there is an electricity demon in the house, and she needs something that doesn't conduct electricity. Does leather protect you from electricity?
It does.
Okay, because I was like, shouldn't she be getting a raincoat or something? But no, the reason that she got the leather jacket is to protect herself from the shocker demon, which they can't use any of the electronics in the house because it calls the demon out of the outlets.
I love that. They had to turn off all the electricity. Phoebe says, this is positively medieval.
Boo.
Foreshadowing.
Boo!
Yeah, so no electricity, no lights, no hair dryers, no phones, no lights.
I'm assuming the refrigerator's unplugged.
It's as primitive as can be. And when I say no phones,
although I guess the stuff isn't necessarily unplugged because the reason
I think they just can't use it. They just can't bring power into it.
Yeah, I guess the VCR was set to record something, and that's what called it forth.
Yeah, so they just can't turn things on. So, okay, thinking this through, they can't turn things on. So I assume the refrigerator has to be unplugged because the refrigerator is running as long as it's plugged in, unless it's broken. The TV can stay plugged in as long as it stays off. And Phoebe accidentally shocks them because it, unleashes the shocker demon because she picks up the phone to call Paige to come over because for some reason this shocker demon, which by the way is a pretty cool effect.
Yeah, it's all CG, and that's usually pretty hit or miss, especially in this era. But honestly, it holds up pretty well.
It's just like an electricity outline of a human. It works.
Yeah. I feel like the simplicity has made it age really well.
Yes.
Plus, I like when they have more bestial elemental demons, like the lake monster that killed their mom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an intelligent thing. It's a malevolent force.
No, this one isn't that, though. Because we specifically learned that, or we are told that all of these demons are coming out of the woodwork specifically because they want to prove themselves to the source. So it must know what it's doing. But it requires the power of 3 to vanquish. So Phoebe goes to pick up the phone to call Paige to come over so they can vanquish this thing. And doesn't think about the fact that the phone is a cordless. Which means it doesn't just use the phone line. It uses power. That might be my time freeze. Spoiler alert. Which is cool because last week we didn't have a time freeze and we talked about how the episode, just because of the way it was structured and the really close in horror of it, meant that it was pretty timeless. Whereas here I kind of love that that is such a time specific thing. This this specific shocker demon attack in this manor could only happen in this very narrow window of time when portable phones existed. I mean, they still exist, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. This kind of portable phone. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, just nobody uses them anymore. Like,
Yeah.
you can still have one.
But, like, yeah, you don't have a landline. It's how you get murdered. I mean, have you seen Scream?
Right, how is Ghostface going to call you if you... Actually, I have seen Scream. I've seen the new Scream. Ghostface clones her best friend's phone and calls her on her cell phone. Wait,
Spoilers for Scream.
Wait, no. Ghostface clones her best friend's phone and texts her on her phone, but is calling the landline that they still have because her mom maintains a landline. And she's like, I'm not picking up a landline.
Spoilers for new Scream.
You should see it. If you like the old Scream, it's very nostalgic baity in like the best possible way. It will activate all of those dopamine receptors in your brain if you like the original Scream.
So Piper and Phoebe successfully ward off the shocker demon. They survive an encounter long enough for it to be like, you know what, not worth it. I'm going to go back in the electricity hole.
The electricity hole.
And Phoebe's like, look, I think it might be time to officially have Paige move into the house. And Piper's more reticent about it. She's like, I mean, I guess maybe.
She's like, what if we don't get along with her?
It's like, I mean, it's... and Phoebe brings this up. Phoebe's like, well, it's not about getting along with someone. It's literally about life or death situations. It's better to have the full power of three under one roof. And Piper's like, I mean, Leo is always looking out for her. He can, send her an orb or over, but also it would be convenient, and I would prefer...
Leo is looking out for her. He can always sense her. Let's keep that in your pocket.
But she's like, yeah, but maybe it would be better so my husband isn't watching my new sister doink some guy.
Yeah, that's going to be explicit in a few scenes.
Smash cut to Paige, I guess post-coitus with Glenn again, or I guess they could just be waking up.
Yeah, it's the morning. She looks at the clock and is like, oh, I'm so late for work. And yes, they are both naked. They have those L-shaped sheets that you get in TV.
Well, Glenn's wearing little boxers. Like, she's got the sheets all around her, and he's not covered by them at all, but he is wearing little shorts.
Oh, I didn't realize that. He was wearing little boxers. Oh, okay. So...
I guess Paige is a cover hog.
Well, Glenn's going to Australia hog, because he is taking off so he can do some world travel, and he's like, hey, you don't have anything going on in your life, come travel with me. Just do it. And
she's like, well, I have a job where I'm trying to be a social worker, and also I have these sisters now. And he's like, you just met these girls. Like, I get it. You found out that you have a long-lost family or whatever, but come to Australia with me. It'll be fun.
You can bond with your sisters after we go on walkabout.
Yeah. Like, you need to go to Australia when you're young enough to run away successfully from all the wildlife that's trying to kill you.
Hey, just remember, kangaroos can't jump backwards. So if you're being chased by a kangaroo, just get behind it.
Paige comes out in a plaid skirt and the weird... I kind of hate how Paige is dressed for this whole episode. I get that they want to contrast her with, like, the old-timey... enchantress long flowing dress thing, but it's like a vampire Willow situation where she's extra pink and fluffy for no good reason.
I mean, I don't mind it. The top she's wearing is on the red end of the pink spectrum, and it's got like this ridiculously frilly collar and cuffs, and I don't hate it.
Well, it's just she goes out and she puts on this like very non-supportive looking bra underneath it that's made out of this weird super shiny material, which feels like a weird choice for a bra.
Nah, that's what bras looked like in the early 2000s if you didn't have gigantic boobs. If you didn't have gigantic boobs, you could buy bras like that. If you have gigantic boobs, your choices are basically always beige. Ugly bras, or live in Portland and go to pencil test.
But yeah, she pulls on this like weird frilly belly. I'm sorry, I know it's charmed, but I'm like, I don't think that's the sort of shirt you should wear to work.
Hey, listen, I am like r/anti-work when it comes to Paige right now, because in the very first episode we get with her, her boss is like, hey, I know you're literally doing the work of an entire other job, but I'm not going to promote you to that job. but I'm going to insist that you keep doing it. Like, fuck that!
Also, you have to go out on a date with my son.
Fuck all of that. She should go to Australia and then just orb back to San Francisco to fight evil.
Yeah. So, Piper and Phoebe show up at her apartment to, get her so that she can help them kill the Shocker Demon.
What's weird is they're both, like, all worked up about it. Like,
they're angry at
Paige. It's not Paige's fault that she exists in a space that is not your space when you haven't asked her to live in your space.
How dare you not read my mind and come live with me, even though I've been actively hostile to you for most of our relationship.
Like, they don't even really want her to live with them. It's like, how dare you not have inherently sensed that we were fighting a demon that required the power of 3 and shown up unasked, vanquished the demon, and then disappeared so we didn't have to deal with you anymore. Like, that's what they want from Paige. So, you know what? Go to Australia, fuck these chicks!
Who is she, Billy?
I am so done with the way everyone in this show treats Paige.
We're seeing a lot of previews for how they're going to treat Billy later.
Yeah, seriously.
Although for Billy, it's less, we just want you for fighting demons, and more,
we want you to babysit our magical child.
Yeah, we're going to promise to teach you how to fight demons, but most of what we want you to do is stuff for us, like pick up groceries and clean the house.
God.
So they're about to just barge into Paige's apartment when Leo orbs in front of them and is like, hey, you shouldn't go in there. Paige just had sex with a guy. And they're like, wait, how do you know that? He's like, I am aware of Paige's activities. And they're like, so wait, you sensed that Paige was having sex with a guy, or were you mystically watching her with your white lighter powers? And that's how you know Paige was having sex with a guy. And it was like a little from column A, a little from column B. I didn't sense it last episode when Phoebe got shrunk by the guy.
She was too small to sense.
You didn't sense the panic or whatever when she was about...
It was tiny panic.
No, like when she was in the process of being shrunk. That did...
I'm so tiny.
Or when Phoebe and Paige swap souls, that was completely out of my ballywick of things to sense. But when one of my churches is getting boned down, I'm all there for that. So Piper and Phoebe are like, God, whatever. And they just burst into the apartment, and Glenn, has to put his fingers over his nipples, so,
Weird continuity error, too. She's not wearing the shirt that we saw her put on.
Paige?
Yeah, she's holding it, but she's not wearing it.
Even though we did see her putting it on. That's weird. And Phoebe is a horny cartoon wolf for Glenn.
I know. She's like, ooh, look at this naked guy. And it's like, that guy just boned your sister. Like, he's off limits.
Oh, we're coming at this from different angles because I'm like, this guy, like, he's attractive enough, but you're boning Cole on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I guess an irregular basis because he's hiding from demons, and I don't think he's in this episode.
He's not in this episode.
But, like, Glenn is an attractive enough guy. He's kind of goofy.
He's exactly the kind of guy that you would see cast as the attractive guy in the year of our Lord 2001.
Really? I think he's more non-main character's boyfriend attractive.
Yeah, generic attractive guy.
I don't think he's generic attractive guy. I think he's goofy attractive guy.
Okay. I was thinking he's like one-off love interest attractive.
I was thinking he's like Sarah Jessica Parker's younger sister in a movie's boyfriend. He's very... I know I said this to describe...
He's the guy Judy Greer ends up with?
No, because Judy Greer is Dowdy, other sister, except in 27 Dresses.
She's the best friend character.
I guess. And I know I said this about her boyfriend from the first couple of episodes, but he has a kind of vaguely pop punk, or alternatively, he's a comedian who's doing acting roles. No. He was a late 90s musician, and now he's doing acting roles. I know that it's weird to say this because he actually appears later in this show, but he's Nick Lachey. Oh, no. But, like, a little goofier. I was going for, although this is real life, he's the Pete Davidson dating,
okay, this guy's
actors and models and stuff.
A lot hotter than Pete Davidson.
But he's a Pete Davidson genre of guy.
Only in that Papyrus and Helvetica are both fonts. They're not the same font.
No, I think he has a lot of the same qualities as Pete Davidson physically. Anyway, the point is that
I don't even know where to go with that.
the point is that he's an attractive enough guy, but Phoebe,
calm down, Phoebe.
Phoebe is next level horny. She, again, cartoon wolf, tongue sticking out, sweat everywhere. And I'm like, really, Phoebe? Really? And he's like, okay, this seems like something I shouldn't be involved with, and also your new sister is making me uncomfortable, so I'm just going to let you deal with this. And Paige is not thrilled that her sisters have burst in on her. They weren't even post-coital. They just woke up, right? And,
yeah.
I mean, I guess they could have had morning sex.
Well, I mean, technically, if you're not a virgin, aren't you always post-coital?
That's the thing with it. This is completely off topic, but that's the thing that always gets me with you can't wear white after Labor Day. It's always after Labor Day.
You can't wear white between Labor Day and Easter, I believe, is when you're allowed to wear it again. Well,
then that should be the...
there is a time period.
That should be the expression, then. It shouldn't be you can't wear white after Labor Day. You have to have the other half of that, otherwise it doesn't... You can't feed the gremlin... You can't feed the Mowgli... Mowgli? Is that what they're called?
Mogwai.
Yeah, you can't feed them after midnight. It's always after midnight!
Okay, here's the thing about the white after Labor Day, which is different from the Mogwai.
Okay.
That kind of rule, white after Labor Day, which fork to use, all of that stuff, that is a nonsensical rule that was invented to separate the people who know the nonsensical rules from the people who don't. So you don't say the second half, because if you know, you know. And if you don't know, then they know that you don't know.
The fork thing's really easy, though.
You
start from the outside and you work in.
It's not that hard.
Like, it's one of those things where, it seems really complicated, but once someone tells you the trick for it, you start with the outside and you work in as the meal goes on.
Wait, what if there is a fork that is diagonally at the top of your plate? Or not diagonally,
horizontally?
Yeah, horizontally at the top of your plate.
I actually don't know that.
Okay, now I'm outing myself as someone who doesn't know the rules, but I'm pretty sure that's where you put the shrimp fork.
Well, shrimp fork's one of those super distinct forks that
That's
you should
true.
be able to tell.
Oh, you should be able to?
By looking at it, because it is visually distinctive from the other forks. But
my point is, all these rules are bullshit.
Yeah, this is all just dumb, made-up stuff that, upper-class people...
with too much time on their hands made up to separate themselves from the people who actually had shit to do.
Yeah,
That's what etiquette is.
If you don't have to work in a field for 12 hours a day, this is the sort of thing you come up with.
Yeah.
Speaking of not having to work in a field 12 hours a day, the Enchantress is... talking to the prince, where she's like, hey, so you want a bone? And the prince is like, I don't want a bone. I want to know where my true love is. And the Enchantress is like, but the stars have aligned in a way that have made it possible for me to cast this spell on you to make you want to bone me.
Also, she has changed out of her evil green dress and into a virginal white dress. Again, still looks amazing.
This prince is doing a lot of not stabbing the evil Enchantress and letting her complete a rhyming couplet in front of him, but,
Then she throws the magic smoke bomb at his feet, and now he is under her spell. He's under her spell.
He's under her spell.
And he kisses her hand, and he's like, ooh, I love you. And he's like, also, I'm totally gonna, chew on your neck now.
Yeah, let's go to Bone Town.
Which is conveniently right there. There's a bed, with gauze around it.
Okay, so does she also live in this castle, or is this just someone else's room? I mean, it doesn't matter at all, but...
No, he went to her castle to look for his girlfriend that she had kidnapped. So he's in her castle. And other places. Anyway, back at the manor.
Back at the manor, they're yelling at Paige for not living with them. They're like, why won't you move in with us, you stupid asshole? And Paige is like, God, I have my own shit to deal with. And Phoebe's like, come on, if you live with us, then we're at our strongest. And, we can successfully fight the demons that are going to come and try and kill us all the time.
She's like, you're not selling this live in the manor thing. Also, as long as I'm here, I'm going to go up to the Book of Shadows and look up this Enchantress thing. And they're like, what does that have to do with this shocker demon? She's like, nothing. This is my thing.
Yeah, as long as I'm here, like, I'll help you kill the stupid shocker demon, but I don't want to live with you guys. And she runs upstairs. She's looking through the book, and Piper's like, we already found the spell to vanquish the shocker demon. She's like, look, as long as I'm here, I'm going to do my thing.
Okay, so I kind of love that they don't understand how to do good cop, bad cop. I mean, they're not really trying to do that. That's just the natural roles they fall into. Because Phoebe's like, if you were here, you could look at the book whenever you wanted, and no one would stop you. And Piper's like, stop looking at the book! We have shit to do!
So, Paige points out that Piper has talked to Paige about the importance of keeping her life separate from her magic life, and that she feels like if she moves in with them, then she's just going to have to do magic stuff all the time.
And Piper's like, I meant I wanted to keep my life separated from my magical life. And that would be a lot easier if you were here to deal with my magical life. I mean, that's not what she says, but come on. Let's be real.
They're very much not being consistent with how they're treating Paige. But to be fair, I feel like that's definitely in character for them. Because remember, Piper at one point was all drilling Paige on magic stuff, but now she's the one who's kind of... I guess it does make sense that when it comes to... She wants her to live here, but she doesn't want her... Like, her being conflicted about Paige's role in the family makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Paige finds the evil enchantress in the book, and also the evil enchantress's spell that we didn't say this, but she was telling Glenn she could never quite remember the spell.
Yeah,
but
when she's telling Glenn the story, she says the spell that the evil enchantress uses to enchant the prince, but she can never quite remember the last line.
Which is a nice parallel to Phoebe having to remember the Wookiee spell way back when.
Yeah.
And
she finds that, and she's like, oh, finally I know the end of the spell. And then she reads it out loud while Piper and Phoebe are going, oh, no. I'm sorry.
I know I've been Team Paige this episode, but Paige, you know that's a spell book. What are you doing, girl?
Yeah. If you're a witch, I feel like, if in Charmed, I feel like you should be cautious about rhyming in general, but especially just don't read stuff from the Book of Shadows out loud. You are an adult woman. You should know how to just read with your eyes and not with your mouth.
Honestly, I think that magical people could really benefit from, like, a gun safety class. Because there are certain rules of gun safety, and one of them is no matter what, no matter how sure you are that it's not loaded, you don't point it at anything that you don't want to shoot.
Mm.
That's the spell. No matter how sure you are that it's not going to work, don't say it out loud unless you want to cast it.
I feel like this is a little bit on Phoebe and Piper, because Phoebe and Piper are literally right next to her, and they're all going, no, don't finish it. And I'm like, I know it is mega rude, but put your hand over her mouth. Like, I know that is next level rude, but do you want to deal with this crap? You don't.
But yeah, she casts the spell to summon a lover and summons the prince.
It's weird because it's specifically to mind control him in the past times, but it calls him forth, I guess, because...
No, I think this one was just to summon him, and this is what she did first, and then she threw the magic smoke bomb to...
I don't...
You know what? I think the enchantress was doing a lot more work than she needed to. Here's my question for you.
Okay.
Why is the enchantress's spell in that book?
Yeah, I feel like that has some questions because... Yeah, actually, the whole enchantress thing definitely predates the Book of Shadows.
Uh-huh.
Which, I mean, I get it. A lot of demon stuff probably predates the Book of Shadows, but, like, we don't get the impression that the enchantress is particularly long-lived or anything. And also, canonically, her plan didn't work.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I am very confused at the convenience of that spell being there.
What? I mean, why is there an entry at all? Like, the enchantress isn't alive, right? I mean, I guess it's also a family history, but
But she's not part of their family. It's just that it's Paige's past life.
So the knight has appeared in present day times, and he is mega horny for Paige. And Phoebe and Piper find this hilarious. Paige does not. Paige orbs a plate into her hands and then smashes it over his head. And she's like, ooh, maybe that shouldn't have been my first reflex. He's not unconscious. I appreciate that he wasn't knocked unconscious by that. He's like, no, it's cool. I'm into the rough stuff. I mean, not really, maybe. I'm under an enchantment to love you, so maybe I'm just cool with it because of that. But
Yes, he gets down on his knees and starts kissing her hand, and she's like, Piper, freeze him! And Piper's like, what if I blow him up? And she's like, just fucking do it!
And she freezes him. And Paige was like, you know what? I don't have the spoons to deal with this right now. I'm going to work. You deal with the night. And they're like, okay, I'm sorry. This is all on you. You're the one who read the book out loud. Like, this isn't really an us problem. And Paige is like, it is now.
They also tell her that she can't leave because being a witch is not a part-time job. And it's like, you told... Well, it's not a job at all because you don't get paid for it. She needs to go get money at her job that she works for a living.
Piper says the charmed ones come first, and Paige ignores that and just kind of storms off. And then Phoebe's like, the charmed ones come first? And Piper's like, it worked when Prue said it, which it very much did not. But
Charmed ones come first. Leo and Cole come never. That's the rule, right? Anyway, it turns out that Piper's love of HGTV has doomed them all.
Yeah, I said this earlier. This is the part of the episode where Piper had set something to record, and it gives the Shocker Demon an opening to come out, zap Phoebe, not enough to kill her, just a little bit. I feel like the Shocker Demon's a little bad at his job if he can't kill them with, electricity.
It's true.
Like,
although
they just get cartoon electrocuted where their hair's all frizzy and they're smoking a little bit.
Piper fends the Shocker Demon off with a wooden coat rack because it doesn't conduct electricity.
Does wood not conduct?
Wood does not conduct electricity.
Huh.
So
they go back to the kitchen to deal with the night, but he has unfrozen and is wandering off looking for Paige.
And Piper's like, so what? Who cares? That's not our deal.
That sounds like Paige's problem. And Phoebe's like, we really shouldn't just let some dude in armor wander around. I mean, as the movie Enchanted has told us, it's very entertaining, but trouble also.
Okay, I have to ask, because it happens in Enchanted and happens here. Why do all knights or I guess princes from fake medieval times land get freaked out by cars? Like, you're familiar with carriages, it's just a super efficient carriage. If we went to the future and we saw, like, bullet cars going through tubes, we wouldn't be like, what is this strange thing?
Well, to be fair, he the main reason he's attacking this thing is to get the guy out so he can give him a lift to wherever Paige is.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right. Okay,
So
complaint retracted. He does recognize it's a super fast carriage. He wants a ride. Okay.
So this is basically just a bus jacking? Is it a garbage truck?
It's a garbage truck.
I like how the guy comes out with a baseball bat to start wailing on the prince, and the prince just, cuts the baseball bat in half, because obviously, I'm like, why did you think that would work? You saw him wailing on your garbage truck with the sword. Do you think he would just not cut your bat in half?
Or maybe he thought it was like a prop sword that could bang on the truck but not actually have an edge.
One of the things in one of the Xanth books, they go to the, world without magic.
Uh-huh.
And they assume that cars are monsters that just ate people, and the people are trapped in them, and they're trying to free them. Which is a takeoff of that.
Sure.
But, yeah, it's weird. You'd think they would just assume next-level carriages.
Yeah. Although I guess I guess it's fair. I guess that is what he assumed.
So, back in Pasty Past times, the maiden, the prince's true love, is like, ha ha, good magic has taken my prince from you, so you can't sink your hooks into him and, get pregnant and then murder him. And the enchantress is like, yeah, I also have magic. Did you forget that? I can just use my magic to go to wherever he is.
She takes a piece of the maiden's hair to make the potion. And then we go to Paige at her...
That seems unnecessary.
No, she needs it because that's kind of...
Love to love.
Love to love. That's how her connection with the prince works. Meanwhile, Paige is at work, and Leo is bothering her at her job. He's all like, ooh, you gotta come back to the manor and fight the shocker demon. And she's like, ooh, I have a job to do.
Do you think Leo knew that when he was being assigned to sisters, a lot of what he was doing, a lot of what his job as a white lighter would be kind of negotiating? He's like...
No, I think he had no idea, and he is in way over his head.
Because he is sort of the... Sounding board's probably the wrong term.
Mediator.
Yes, thank you, yes. Like, a lot of what he is a mediator between the sisters, which I like conceptually, although...
Maybe it shouldn't be Leo.
Well, the fact that he's romantically involved with one of them...
Oof, yeah.
Although, to be fair, he really doesn't let that influence his role as a mediator between the sisters as much as you think he might. He's
fairly even-handed, but it makes it very inappropriate.
Yeah, and he's way more on Paige's side than the other sisters are. Because he is trying to talk her into moving in with them. And he's like, look, I know you feel like they're just using you for your magic, and that's why they want you there. And to be fair, that is a part of it.
It's like 80% of it.
But also, you need instruction, and you need a safe space. You might not like it, but I think you should reconsider moving in with the sisters. And she's like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Mm-hmm. So
she's back on her last episode she wanted to be more active in magic stuff. In the episode before that, she didn't want to do magic stuff. So we're going back and forth a lot.
To be fair, I think right now where we're at is she wants to do magic stuff. She just doesn't want to deal with Halliwell bullshit, and I can relate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I do like that Leo goes back to the manor to talk to Piper and Phoebe, and he's like, look, you need to start treating Paige as more than just the third part of the power of three. Part of the reason she's reticent about moving in with you is that you are not treating her like a sister. You're treating her like a power source.
And of course, Piper's like, but she is a power source! And Phoebe's like, oh my god, this is never gonna work.
Yeah, and Leo's like, look, why don't you help her out with this new problem? Show her, that you can help her, and, read up on the fairy tale, and maybe she'll be more open to moving in if you show her the benefits to living with magical sisters.
So, speaking of people coming to Paige's business and just, completely fucking with her, the prince shows up, and he's like, oh, but I love you, you must run away with me, and her boss is like, what the fuck, and she tells him, oh, this is just my friend who's dressed up for the Ren Fair.
Yeah, we're doing a charity collaboration with the Ren Fair because people who go to Ren Fairs have lots of disposable income and maybe will want to spend some of it on charity.
That's not necessarily untrue.
Yeah. And the Shocker Demon has followed Paige to work, and it starts electrocuting her when the prince decapitates it with a metal sword, which I feel like...
Okay, that shouldn't have worked. I feel like we just did rule of three here, where you were like, wait, would that conduct electricity? Would that conduct electricity? And then he pulls out a metal sword. But yeah, no, the Shocker Demon just runs away from it.
Yeah, it turns out being decapitated is not really super deadly if you're made out of electricity, but it's like, you know what, I don't feel like dealing.
I thought you were going to say being decapitated isn't good for you, even if you manage to deliver a shock to the person who did it.
Yeah, it's like...
Sorry, now I'm just going to say usually hilts are wrapped in, strips of leather, so maybe it didn't conduct all the way to the prince's heart.
So...
I just want to share an interesting thing about electricity.
Okay.
You should have total respect for electricity. You can have massive amounts of it go through your body if you're grounded. Mm-hmm. If your feet are on the ground... Don't do this, but...
Don't try this, kids at home.
No. The point is, your body can withstand fairly large electric shocks as long as it doesn't pass through your heart. But if it passes through your heart, a single amperage will kill you. That's what's so fascinating about electricity. When it comes to electricity, humans are basically vampires. Where it's we can take all of this damage, but if it touches our heart, we're done. We're done. Completely done.
I want to point out, humans also don't do great if they get staked in the heart.
I just watched the Wish episode of Buffy, where she says she's going to stake Anya in the heart, And because it's the Wishverse, and Giles is like, that she's not a vampire, and Buffy says, you'd be surprised what that kills. Although, not demons.
Not vengeance demons.
So, yeah.
It'll take more than a sword in the chest to stop a vengeance demon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, her boss is all grumpy about this guy waving a sword around the office, and Paige's like, it's for charity, tee, gotta go. So, Piper is bemoaning Paige's independence, and
while she's doing that, Phoebe is reading the entry for the evil enchantress, and it's like, it says here she was a straight up bitch. Do you think she might be Paige's past life?
well, she says that the enchantress was someone who came to the craft late but picked it up quickly, and it's probably Paige's past life, which is kind of a huge leap, but okay.
Well, not just because of that, but because the prince is obsessed with Paige.
Yeah.
So that actually is really good evidence for it being her past life.
And also, Paige had memories of the spell, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's come to think of it, it's pretty obvious.
This is where Phoebe briefly mentions, my past life came back to bite me in the butt, but let's not talk about that any deeper.
Yeah. I mean, we'd have to get into a lot if we started talking about that deeper.
Piper points out that the book says that the enchantress's power was to control elements, and that's not Paige's power, which...
That's not how past lives worked before!
Yeah, Phoebe's power was some weird heat thing that she needed to get extra power from her boyfriend. Her evil boyfriend had to give her a potion to increase her power threefold so that she could actually do fireballs, so... How much did her heat powers... Also, that's not how the Warren Lines powers worked.
Doesn't...
We can't get into it. The
evil enchantress comes through a portal, and Phoebe's like, ha! Told you! Look, it's Paige! Totally Paige's past life!
And then she uses her power over the elements. It's over the elements, but she basically just uses wind. I guess it's like elements as in weather.
Yeah.
Not elements as in she can do fire and,
Yes.
She uses her elemental powers to blow Phoebe and Piper into a wall, but not in a way that kills them.
She also sets a lot of things on fire so that we see Piper and Phoebe running around the manor with fire extinguishers.
Oh, I guess it is the classical elements then.
Okay, I guess air is wind, right?
She just defaults to air, but I guess she can do the other...
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I have to point out something I love here. The Halliwell Manor has at least 2 fire extinguishers, and that seems about right.
Yeah. I don't know why Piper is reticent about using her powers on the evil enchantress.
I know. I was going to say, I mean, does she think that it will... She thinks it will hurt Paige if she blows up her past life, but that's not how past lives work.
Yeah, and we know her past life. And they treat it like they can't hurt the enchantress without hurting Paige, but that's not the case at all.
Phoebe even says that. She's like, we risk vanquishing Paige if we vanquish this. That doesn't make sense.
And Piper's like, fine, we'll just bind her powers. Why wouldn't that bind Paige's powers by that logic?
Right.
I like this episode, but thinking about it doesn't help a lot.
So they decide that the answer is just open the portal back to the past and just toss her back in there.
Bind her powers, toss her back in the past, and, hopefully she'll remain a virgin, and it won't alter the course of magic, because if her plan succeeds, it will alter the course of magic so that evil is more powerful.
Okay. So, that means, as you said, that her plan was not successful. So why does Paige remember the story of her plan being successful? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The enchantress goes to Paige. Jesus Christ, Paige's office.
The enchantress goes to Paige's office, and Paige's boss is like, "Oh, I guess you're into the Renfair thing too now, huh, Paige?" And she's like, "Okay, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to look at my cubicle and discover what my future life is up to." And she's like, "Ew, I'm a good witch. Barf."
She figures out who she is by seeing a picture of Paige and another employee at a Christmas party or something. And, of course, recognizes herself and sees the little label that's Paige. So she must be Paige and finds Paige's stuff. And
I mean, also the boss called her Paige, so...
Yeah.
But Paige is dealing with the knight, and she's like, Jesus Christ, dude, I don't want to bone you. You're under an enchantment or whatever.
She knows he's under a spell, but doesn't yet know that the evil enchantress is her past life. She doesn't know why the spell defaulted to her. I guess that's fair.
Well,
I guess
she's the one who read the spell, so.
Oh, yeah. That's true, I guess. Okay. But
well, the whole thing is that this is a parallel with her thing with Glenn, right? Glenn.
Yeah, because he wants her to run off to Australia. This guy's like, come back to me with my kingdom.
And she's like, I can't. I have responsibilities here. And he's like, but don't you want to live a life of freedom and fun, in medieval royalty?
I mean, we didn't say it, but Glenn also said your life could be a fairy tale. Also, just a quick note for everybody. If you're talking to somebody who's like deep into Wicca, as Paige clearly is at this point, your life could be a fairy tale is not as fun or tempting a proposition as you think it is, because that's almost certainly exactly the kind of goth kid who is familiar with the original Grimm fairy tales.
Yeah, and even...
Come away with me to Australia. Surely your toes and heels will be chopped off so that you can fit into tiny shoes.
Or your stepmother will cut you into chunks, make you into soup, feed you to your father, bury them under the mulberry tree, where you will be reborn as a bird who drops gifts on your sister and your father, but drops a heavy stone on your stepmother.
Or you'll be forced to be silent for years and years and years while you weave uncomfortable clothing out of thistle to save your brothers from being geese.
Or you'll be naked in front of an entire kingdom. Like, even the non-Grimm's version of a lot of fairy tales, like, Little Red Riding Hood has a uncomfortable, Cronenberg-esque journey through a wolf's digestive system in the nice versions of the fairy tale. I mean, I guess a lot of versions have her and Grandma not get eaten by the wolf at all.
Yeah, but those are more modern versions.
Those are even more modern versions. Like, in the version I grew up with, the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood were at least briefly inside of a wolf, which would fuck you up pretty bad, I
Yes,
would
and
think.
then the woodcutter chops open the wolf's stomach to get them out. You know, it's a really great book.
What?
Witches Abroad by Terry Pratchett.
It is a very good book.
I kind of feel like just the fact that we're talking about fairy tales right now makes me want to reread Witches Abroad. I think I'm going to.
So, Piper and Phoebe show up. Piper freezes the prince, and they explain the situation to Paige. They have a ridiculously hard time explaining the concept of past lives, and for some reason, and then Paige is like, wait, so in the past I was evil? And they're like, yes, I mean, no. I mean, yes, but no.
Wait, she's like, if I was evil in the past, does that mean I'm evil now? And Piper's like, yes. Piper? What the fuck? And Phoebe...
That's not even true in the context of charm.
Well, Phoebe jumps in and is like, no, I was evil in the past too. Piper. Don't worry about Piper. She's still evil now. Also, they have a very like reincarnation idea of past lives here, where it's like you improve as a human each time you're reincarnated. So she's good now, even though she was evil then, because she's evolved.
Paige is very gung-ho about handling the Enchantress herself, and I really like this. This feels like character development. It feels like it's building off what happened last episode, because Paige is like, look, this is my story. I should be the one to finish it. I want to face the Enchantress by myself. And last episode, Piper did not want her to face the collector guy. But this episode, she's like, you know what? I feel like I've seen you steadily improve as a witch over the very short period of time I've known you. I believe that you can handle this situation yourself. And Phoebe's the one who wants to, like, help out. But I like that Piper is acknowledging that Paige has grown a lot as a witch in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Although apparently not enough to realize that you shouldn't just read spells out of the Book of Shadows. But I do really like this character development between Piper and Paige. That Piper does have more faith in Paige now.
Yes.
Faith that it turns out is completely unearned.
Yeah, so Paige takes the potion that will strip the evil enchantress of her powers, but as soon as she encounters her, she throws the potion at her, and the evil enchantress just blasts it out of the air midair.
And she's like, oh my god, this is what I become. And then she blows her into a car, and we smash cut to Leo. He's like, well, Paige fucked that up. I can sense that Paige fucked that up almost immediately.
Really? Really? You can sense that, but not, whatever.
So, the Enchantress, having blasted Paige into a car immediately upon encountering her, bursts into the room, and she's like, I'm here for my prince. Be gone. Other witches. Why doesn't Piper try freezing her? I mean, I know we've talked about this before.
Because she's afraid that if she blows her up, that will somehow affect Paige, even though that makes no sense.
Freezing's an area effect spell. Point kind of away from her, and that way if, you accidentally explode...
Wasn't exploding also an area of effect spell?
No, because she misses with explosions sometimes.
Oh, okay, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that blowing up the Enchantress isn't going to hurt Paige.
Yeah, I mean, it's dumb all the way down, but... The Enchantress opens a portal, she wind blasts Phoebe and Piper out of the way, grabs the prince, and jupes back to medieval times. Piper and Phoebe immediately get up and jump into the time Gina.
I mean, I appreciate that. When you see an evil person kidnap the prince and jump through a portal, I love that your first instinct is to jump into the portal.
I'm not to immediately go back to Once Upon a Time, where there's so many places. Paige drives a goddamn VW bug. There's so much Once Upon a Time in this episode.
Well, I mean, really, isn't there so much charm to Once Upon a Time? Because, of course, this is first.
Yeah. And this episode has a lot of stuff to do with portals. But I appreciate that, unlike in Once Upon a Time, they don't just stand around talking next to portals they need to go through.
Oh my god, they do that a lot, don't they?
So much agita in Once Upon a Time. We have to have a whole ass conversation before getting... You have the conversation after you go through the portal. It's a time-sensitive thing. You don't want to get stuck in fairy tale land. You have the conversation when you go through the portal, not before.
Now, to be fair, they're going from their own attic to who knows where. That might not be a bad time to have a conversation about whether or not to jump through the portal.
Actually, they're in a random warehouse.
Yeah, because they could, see the...
Because they were tracking where Paige had taken the prince to a place where she would get fired.
They had to be close to Paige so that Leo could hear her if she got into trouble, because that's how his... No, not really.
Or maybe this is supposed to be Paige's apartment?
Oh! Yes, it is. Okay. She lives in a warehouse. She lives in a loft in the warehouse district. Okay, that's exactly what's going on. Okay.
So, Paige runs back into the apartment just in time to see Phoebe and Piper jump through the portal.
And she's like, Leo, I feel like I am a failure. I did not bind the powers of my past self. She kidnapped the prince, and my two sisters abandoned me to fight her, and now it's just me and fucking you.
Paige is like, wait a second, if the Enchantress is my past life, maybe I can tap into her power and recreate the portal by reworking this spell so that it brings me to my sisters. And Leo's like, I don't know, Paige, I don't know if that'll work. Why would that not work? Why would her casting a spell not work?
It instantly works, and now she's thinking with portals.
Also, why did she need to be a reincarnation of the Enchantress to do the portal thing? That was just casting a spell, something she can do as a witch.
I think since a lot of this episode is about her feeling less than confident in her powers, she had to see her past self do it to feel confident that she could. And also, I just want to point out, her sisters dove into that portal. She just calmly walks through it. Like, no need to make this a whole thing, girls.
Well, they didn't know how much time it was going to be open. But, it's just, I don't get why Leo was like, I don't know if you'll be able to make your own portal, Paige. It's a rhyming couplet, Leo. It's not rocket science. Although she does do the whole thing that they pretend to do in this, where she's like, oh, I'll reverse engineer this spell by saying the same spell but slightly differently.
And
this is before they realize that they can just say whatever crap as long as it rhymes.
Okay, so let's talk about Past Lives and Charmed. Because Phoebe and Piper in the past have been captured and shackled to a wall because they don't have any witch powers, because they're in the past before their powers existed, so they don't have any powers. However, Paige has powers because she can tap in to the powers of her past life, which means what? Phoebe and Piper's souls are brand new and they didn't exist before now?
Well, we know they're not brand new because
Well, they didn't exist before the 20s?
yeah, I don't know. I don't. This just.
Or maybe...
I liked this episode when we started watching
No,
it.
no, it is a good episode. It is a good episode. It's just...
You can't look at it too hard. It falls apart if you look at it too hard. But the maiden, the Princess True Love, is like, oh, you are witches from the future? Have you come to rescue? Have you come to save me and stop the evil enchantress? And they're like, we did, but we don't have power, so she just chained us to a wall. And the True Love is like, oh.
So Leo runs in because he went through the portal with Paige, and he tries to get them out of the shackles, but he doesn't have any white lighter powers because...
Past.
I
mean, I guess that does track if you go... I guess it makes sense that it's consistent along lines of magical creatures. So he just sword fights the shit out of a dude. Like, there's a guard guarding them, and he tries to stop Leo from, from freeing them, and Leo just beats the shit out of him, and, I appreciate that Leo does not kill this guy.
Yeah, that would be bad. While this fight is going on, Paige is fighting her evil past self, and they do that classical fighting maneuver where they're both throwing electricity at each other, and the electrical bolts are, like, meeting in the middle. Oh, by the way, Paige is throwing electricity because she can only tap into her past self's power, so she can do what her past self can do, but not, like, presumably she wouldn't be able to orb.
Okay, I actually kind of really love the sword fight between Leo and the guard guy, especially the fact that Leo ends up beating him by just headbutting him really hard when they're at, like, sword.
Yes!
Sword. He's not David Nolan. He's not charming. He's not going to just go around stabbing dudes, but he just...
It's well choreographed.
It's well choreographed, and honestly, I kind of like seeing Leo as a badass. It doesn't follow really throughout the rest of the show, but it's kind of neat to see Leo doing this sort of thing.
It's cool to see him, like, have a skill.
Plus, I love how incredibly horny Piper gets for him, because, he takes the keys off the guard and unlocks Phoebe and Piper, and Piper's like, Jesus Christ, Leo.
She's like,
I want to see more of that energy in our bedroom from now on.
She's like, I like the way you work that sword, big boy. So Piper and Phoebe pulled the potions out of their pockets, and they throw them at the evil enchantress and bind her powers, and the maiden runs in and sees her shirtless prince and is all excited and happy that they're reunited. And let me tell you something. This man without a shirt is deserving of the Tex Avery Wolf treatment.
Yeah, this dude is shredded.
Like, I appreciate that the actor who played Glenn was like, you know what, it doesn't feel like it fits for me to play the prince as well. And it's true, that doesn't work. But man, I appreciate that guy's confidence to be shirtless when this man is also shirtless.
Yeah,
is like, he could be in an MCU movie. That's how shirtless he is.
You could grate cheese off of those abs.
Not to, like, totally objectify him or anything.
But the Princess True Love comes in and gives him True Love's kiss, which breaks the enchantment that the enchantress enchanted him with. And then they just make out over the enchantress, who sits on the floor and pouts because she doesn't have powers anymore.
Yep.
I feel like someone should maybe, like, handcuff her or something.
She doesn't have powers anymore. Who cares?
She could still, I don't know, stab them. It's just a weird note that they're like, okay, we're gonna reopen the portal and go back.
Wait, they're gonna what? Who's gonna reopen the portal? Because I think they just bound the enchantress's powers. So what exactly is Paige tapping into to open that portal?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, like you said, I don't want to. This is an episode that is enjoyable to watch, but does not bear too much scrutiny. It does not hold up well under scrutiny.
Yeah. So they portal back to present times, and Piper's like, hey, Paige, you know what? You're a very competent, capable witch. We shouldn't have pushed you so much. I'm sure you'll be fine on your own. We can just page you whenever we need your help.
Boo. So...
I was going to say call, but, cell phones weren't a thing in this time period, I guess, except they were.
But it doesn't matter because she is going to move in.
Yeah, it turns out, as oh my god, is she channeling Mary Margaret? Because
How dare you?
as,
How dare you?
as soon as they're like, you don't have to move in if you don't want to. Oh, well then I want to now.
So she does. She moves into Prue's old room, and Phoebe and Piper come in to greet her. And just in case you forgot that this is only a few months post 9/11, Phoebe is in fact wearing a American flag
Tube top.
It's not funny. It's not.
She's supporting America with this super patriotic tube top.
Like, in retrospect, and I say in retrospect, we knew it at the time too. Our country lost its freaking mind, and to get like really kind of serious for a second, there was an Onion article that just really hit me hard when it came out in the Onion's issue, the issue that they put out immediately post 9/11, which was like, area woman unsure what else to do bakes an American flag cake. Our country lost its freaking mind, and if you are like
of a certain age,
which is getting like older and older, right? Like, I'm sure a significant amount of our listeners are 22 or younger, and or even when do you start knowing things? When you're like 7?
Yeah.
So like 29 and younger. Jesus Christ, time. What is time? Like, you may be unaware of how much our country freaking lost its mind.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that Phoebe and Paige are dressed, and I'm putting this in heavy finger quotes, fashionably. I mean, Phoebe looks fine. Alyssa Milano is beautiful. The flag tube top red pants thing does work for her.
Yeah, it's a good look. It's just, it reminds me of how...
Paige is dressing like the best friend in a Disney Channel original TV show.
That is what she looks like. She's got a bright yellow beret, and I'm here for it.
But
honestly, I know you were joking about how Paige was dressed earlier in this episode, but I
hate that flamingo shirt. It looked so awful on her.
Oh, that's funny. I don't hate it. But honestly, I'm pretty much almost universally loving Paige's looks.
I do like how Piper is dressed, just because it's so like, it's a totally normal way to dress, but it's so incongruous with how fashion usually works on Charmed, because she's just wearing like a t-shirt and jeans.
Like, was Holly Marie Combs late to set and they just went with it? Like
it's like a perfectly ordinary thing to wear, but the other two are dressed kind of fashion platey. Like, Paige is wearing a pretty nice boob shirt. I don't know how to describe it.
It's a weird cut. The neckline is bizarre. I don't even know what I would call that neckline, but yeah. As for I'm
and she's got like a chunky white belt. Like,
mm-hmm.
It's clear that this isn't just an outfit you're wearing around. Whereas,
except it's the Charmed universe, so that is how they dress, just walking around.
Yeah, in Charmed, this is the sort of outfit you just wear walking around, but Piper's wearing the sort of outfit you actually wear when you're just walking around.
I'm trying to figure out if the shirt she's wearing is like a specific band that they wanted to promote or something, but I got nothing. Anyway.
So Paige is moving into the manor, and she's like, well, before I move in, officially we should. And they turn something on, the Shocker Demon comes out, they say the Shocker Demon vanquishing spell, it blows up very, very easily. I love how casual this is.
Mm-hmm. And then Paige is like, all right, well, I'm out. By the way, I have a lot of sex, so knock before you come into my room, please.
Yeah, also, I'm going to rearrange some stuff in the living room. And Piper's like, haha, no, you're not. And then Phoebe's like, and they all lived happily ever after. And Piper's like, no.
Okay, it was a good episode that doesn't withstand scrutiny, but you know what?
Yeah, this is an episode where I feel like it might be more fun to just watch than,
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And honestly, this episode is kind of, we've been talking about this, but this episode is kind of a microcosm of how I feel about Once Upon a Time, which is, a fun show with a sexy evil queen that we love that does not withstand any sort of inquiry as to why people are doing the things they are doing in that show.
Yeah. Because I want to be clear here, like there's a reason that Rose McGowan got cast as Cora on Once Upon a Time. She really does the whole evil enchantress thing well. Like this episode was playing to her strengths. There's a lot of people having to play two characters things that don't really work because the actress cannot pull off two different modes.
Good and evil.
I feel like I'm talking around a certain actress. Alyssa Milano.
I know.
Although that's not really fair because Alyssa Milano just kind of can't pull off evil. But like, you know what?
You know what? I'm gonna withhold my judgment on whether or not Alyssa Milano can pull off evil until we get to the end of this season.
Yeah.
I know you watched it more recently than I did, so.
Actually, no. I've been avoiding watching stuff from later season 4.
Oh, okay. Well, then let's withhold our judgment on how well Alyssa Milano can do evil until we get to the end of this season.
I'm thinking more whenever Alyssa Milano has to do character acting.
Well, I mean, the thing that's popping into my head, of course, is Alyssa Milano having to pretend to be Paige, but that feels more like Mean Girl stuff than poor acting.
Yeah, actually, she did a really good job when she was possessed by the Woogie. I guess I was also thinking about her past life episode, which none of the acting in that was very good because it wasn't a very good episode. She did a really good job being evil when she was possessed by the Woogie. She didn't do a great job being evil when Proof was forced into marrying the Warlock and it turned all the sisters evil. That was bad all around, though.
Yeah, but it's not fair to hold the body swap episode against her because if a person's walking around going, "Ooh, I'm Paige," you're not like, "God, that woman is a terrible actress. I don't believe she's Paige for a second." Oh my.
So, yeah, I don't know. I like this episode.
I recommend watching this episode and not thinking about a single thing we said.
Just enjoy the ride.
Just get into evil Rose McGowan.
Yeah.
Our next episode is Brain Drain. And according to the Peacock summary, the source taps into Piper's brain, altering her perception of reality.
Okay, so this is going to be a controversial opinion. I remember this episode, and do you know what this episode is?
The episode from season 5 where Glory drains Tara's brain?
No. This is What If Normal Again was good.
Okay, I cannot wait to watch and then talk about this episode.
Yeah, because this is the episode where the source uses magic to convince Piper that she's in an asylum and that everything has just been a delusion so that she'll renounce witchcraft and they'll lose the power of 3. Which, it's the same basic premise as Normal Again, except it's much, much better, which is such a rare thing when Buffy and Charmed share a premise for an episode.
That the Charmed one would win?
That the Charmed one is head and shoulders above the Buffy one. As longtime listeners of any of our podcasts know, I hate Normal Again. I think it's the worst episode of Buffy and possibly one of the worst episodes of television, period.
I mean, you're not alone in that. So, I do want to say a thing since we just said that, this is probably a good episode to watch without thinking about it.
Before getting into our segments?
Yes. I just want to throw out there that this is on Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
And Peacock had a terrible quarter. Like, 0 new subscribers. And I don't work for Peacock. I don't care about businesses. I don't care if a business is successful or not, but I do really want season 3 of Girls 5 Eva.
Yeah.
So, if you are on the fence, I would love if I could influence you to just nudge you a little to subscribing to Peacock.
It's got a lot of good shows. Rutherford Falls is great. Girls 5 Eva, a third example.
The Saved by the Bell reboot that has no right to be as good as it is.
The Saved by the Bell reboot is ridiculously good given, what it is.
Also, We Are Lady Parts, incredible. Like, yeah, so listen, if you're on the fence and you were like, maybe I should get Peacock to watch Charmed.
Even if you're just doing it for long enough to watch these shows that we're recommending to you, because with everything that's going on with HBO Max, there's a bunch of shows that I really love that I'm aware will disappear forever once whatever streaming service decides that they're not profitable enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like HBO Max is already deleting a lot of stuff that it's just going to be lost forever because physical media isn't so much a thing anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, we do another podcast about Farscape, and Farscape we generally watch on Amazon Prime because my first husband took all of the DVDs when he left, and do not get me started on that.
Mm.
But yeah, so we watched it on Amazon Prime, but on August 1st it disappeared off Amazon Prime. And even though Amazon insisted that this was a mistake and it would come back, we are recording this on the 9th and it is not back yet. And news just came out about the Henson Company, the Jim Henson Company, signing a deal with a different streaming company for other things. Doesn't necessarily preclude it being on Amazon Prime, but it makes me think that it's not a glitch, it's been taken down. So, you know, I rebought the DVDs of season 4 of Farscape so that we can keep going with our podcast. Yeah, before, not to get all like philosophical about it, but before recording was a thing, pop culture media, there was always an ephemeralness about it. And I guess that
it's just coming back in a new form now.
Yeah, and I guess that's okay. In a way, that's okay, right? Like, the performance that I saw of Matt and Ben, right? Like, only exists in my memory and the memory of the, like, it was a tiny theater. It only exists in my memory and the memory of, like, the 200 other people who were in that theater that night. But it's still kind of sad. I still wish I could record it. I still wish I could, like, just sit back and replay it. Ooh.
I mean, that was the great thing about when streaming services started being a thing. Because you suddenly had the ability... Because even with DVDs and stuff, like, there's... I mean, you're always sort of at the mercy of greater forces when it comes to this sort of thing.
Well, but even then, like, media degrades. Like, it doesn't last forever. To bring it back to Rutherford Falls... The main character is setting up a Minneshanka museum for it's a fictional indigenous people, but she's trying to set up like a museum of Minneshanka artifacts, and there's a kind of brief discussion about how hard she's working to preserve things that are in their nature designed to disappear. They're designed to not last forever. And I guess media is like that too. And I feel like I just got really like... I feel like I got into a very heavy space right now when all I am saying is putting out an ask for if you were thinking about getting Peacock so you could watch Charmed along with us, let me tell you there's lots of good shows on there and maybe go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I really would like Girls 5 Eva to have another season.
Yes. I feel like there's so much more story to tell.
So let's go to our segments. Much like the Charmed ones, we have our own power of 3. The first power in our pack is Premonition, who in this episode is, was, or will become famous. The
prince was played by Charlie Weber, who... Wait. Ben is the prince.
The prince is Ben?
Wait, are you saying that the prince knows Ben?
No. Let me get this straight. You're saying there's some connection between the prince and Ben.
We're just taking for granted that our audience has watched Buffy.
Yes. The guy who plays the prince in this episode played Ben in Buffy season 5, the human counterpart to the Hell God Glory.
Hey, spoilers.
Yes, spoilers for Buffy. See, the whole episode, I thought he was the guy who was the Knight of Byzantium or whatever. I was like, oh, he looks so familiar, and I know I've seen him in Buffy, and I think it was just the armor that made me think, oh, he's the Knight of Byzantium whose brain Glory eats, because those two characters do look kind of alike.
I love that, like, it's almost as though the Ben, like, brain, obfuscation actually worked on you. You could not recognize him as Ben.
I did figure out it was Ben, though. Like,
you figured out it was Ben when I said, oh! And you were like, it's Ben!
But I got the right season of Buffy.
You were literally so close to it.
But yeah, The guy who was the prince in this was Ben on Buffy. Ben is Glory. Glory is Ben.
Yes. Spoilers.
Spoilers for Buffy. Was there anyone else, or are we going to our next segment?
I think we're going on to our next segment.
Time freeze. What specifically dated the episode? Setting your VCR to record something.
Using a handheld landline phone.
We were a little spoiled for choice this episode. They're two very big things.
Very specific things.
Now, that'll take us to our last segment. Telekinesis. What moved you this episode? Do you have anything?
I don't have telekinesis.
I do. I genuinely really like it's a small moment and it's kind of understated, but the fact that Piper believes in Paige enough to let her go after the Enchantress by herself. I feel like it is the result of the two have had a very rocky relationship up to this point. And it shows sort of a level of trust in Paige that Piper really hasn't had at any point prior. And I love this very small piece of character development. I really wish they kind of did more with Phoebe and Paige's relationship, because even in the body swap episode, we don't get the same kind of tension between Phoebe and Paige that we do with Paige and Piper, and I feel like the two of them are forging a stronger connection by getting through this tension together.
I mean, there's a brief moment in the body swap episode when Phoebe in Paige's body kind of realizes what a party girl Paige is, and it's like, oh, she's like me when I was younger. And Phoebe has been, the baby, the irresponsible one, and it would be interesting for her to kind of have to deal, like, they touch on it, but I would really love to see her dealing with the now youngest sister.
Yeah, and
even, like, sorry, I can see a plot line where Phoebe wants to get Paige to act more responsibly, and then has to confront the fact that Paige just is more responsible than Phoebe was at that age. Like, Phoebe makes assumptions about that, but Paige is more responsible because, unlike Phoebe, she kind of had to go out. She had to go out on her own. Phoebe got to run away.
Yeah. One of the things I do really like, and there are a lot of parallels between Paige's character arc that happened before she was introduced to the show and Phoebe's character arc before the show started. But the fact is that Phoebe got kind of shepherded back in. Like, she had a whole support system that sort of helped her do the whole reformed rake thing, but with sisters instead of love interests.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she had a similar journey to Paige, but Paige had to do it all by herself. And the fact that we come to Paige after she's completed this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the fact that Paige, being an only child, allows her to have the same kind of position in the family that Phoebe had as the baby.
Right. And, yes.
There's a lot of really good character work there that just doesn't really get addressed. But I'm
really excited to in the very near future talk to you about Rose McGowan's memoir, because there are so many parallels with Rose McGowan, who was never really parented, was emancipated from her parents before she could drive. Like, I'm interested to talk to you about this.
I believe that you might have one of our secret powers.
I was going to say that I almost had a telekinesis, something that moved me, but I realized it moved me in a different direction, and it was really more of a levitation.
Oh, what made you go, fuck yeah, and rise up into the air?
Rose McGowan's appearance as the evil enchantress. That entrance. Fuck yeah. And then also, of course, I do have a time explosion, a molecular
combustion.
And that's just, as we talked at length, about how
none of the past life stuff makes any sense.
It not just doesn't make any sense, but doesn't make sense with what has gone before. It's not just that it's internally inconsistent in this one episode, it's that it's inconsistent with what we saw in the 1920s episode with Evil Phoebe, but what are you gonna do? It's Charmed.
Alright, so I believe that'll about do it.
Yeah, I think that will. Our show is partially listener-supported. If you want to be one of the supporters, you should head over to our website, www.welcometotelevision.net, and click on our Patreon link. We'd like to thank our current $5 and above patrons, Beryl, Patricia, Rosa, Ryan, Maricruz, Benjamin, Kate, Jen, and Dan.
If you'd like to support the show in other ways, you could always rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find the show.
We can also be contacted at ilovetelevisionzines@gmail or at ilovetvzines@twitter.com.
So until next time, I'm Max.
And I'm Tina.
And this has been Welcome to the Halliwell Manor.